Ross. I'm the director of the Career Services Office of Framingham State. Been there for 18 years. And in addition, my wonderful team is on. And if they could just wave and say hello. And we're going to talk about business and employer showcases. And we've got will be four amazing mentors that are going to extol their just, brilliant minds about, what they do at their name, what they do at their organization, and their organization, of course, and kind of like a little bit of their career path. It kind of shows you that you just don't make a straight line. There's a little bumps and turns and stop signs and go signs. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Maria to start.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Maria Sarcinelli. I am a senior team lead in customer service at MathWorks, so right down the road from Framingham, although I don't know if anyone's actually at Framingham State, but theoretically right down the road. And I've been there for 9 years now. I actually graduated from Framingham State with a degree in business, and actually met someone when I was at Framingham State who works for Steve Basara, who's on the call, who was already at MathWorks when I was job hunting, and she was able to refer me, and I started in the customer service team. I spent a couple of years training the worldwide customer service team, all our new hires that onboarded. I did that for about 5-6 years. And then I was able to move back into customer service in a management role for the past 3 years. So definitely stayed in the same department, but bounced around with different focuses over the last few years.
Thank you, Maria. And Brian?
Great. Hi, everybody. Brian Dardy. Nice to meet you all. With Staples Inc., our North American delivery operations, so separate from our retail organization. Really, it's focused on the corporate entities and business-to-business customers that we support. I've been with Staples for, it'll be 5 years upcoming, which is hard to believe. I've been in human resource the entire time since I've been at Staples. I actually graduated with a sport management degree. I thought I was going to be communications, back-end support in a large sports organization, or even in front of the camera, doing some interviews, on the field was my dream. But, lo and behold, I'm in human resources, and, today I focus on diversity recruiting strategies. So that involves analyzing trends in the market as it relates to diverse talent, building I&D strategies, and supporting all the business functions here at Staples to reach their I&D goals and objectives, aligning with external diversity partner organizations, embedding them into the organization in a meaningful way, to accelerate diversity growth, and, a slew of other things, but really, focused on diversity acceleration for our organization as it relates to TA. I've seen my role transition over the last 5 years. I think I've been in 6 positions. I don't know, you can help me count over the last 6 years. I started 5 years ago in the university recruiting program. So I was lead recruiter, recruiting at the ground level, hitting colleges, campuses all across really New England, recruiting for internship talent, recruiting for rotational programs, and our co-op program at the time. I then transitioned into managing our contingent workforce program, which is called Staples Flex Labor, which really encompassed developing processes and protocols and guidelines as it relates to how we engage our third-party vendors who bring in contractors into our organization at all different levels. So I oversaw that for some time. I then transitioned back into university recruiting, but as a manager, so overseeing the strategy of university recruiting. So it was a really nice opportunity for me to manage the team and lead the initiatives there. I then was promoted into a role where I oversaw supply chain hiring initiatives, and that was really focused on the field operations, so our fulfillment centers, distribution centers, delivery operations, and managing a recruiting team there. I then managed another team, which was called Emerging Talent. It was a new name. We recently created it, and it was focused on hiring all entry-level associates throughout our organization, with a hyper focus on diverse talent within our sales operations. And most recently, was moved over to this diversity recruiting role to really, again, embody and encompass and bring to life strategies for the entire organization.
Thank you, Brian.
That's a
Wow.
little bit.
I can't believe 6 different roles since I've probably met you, right? That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been quite the ride. You know, it's a combination of you know, adjusting to our customer demand. To be honest with you, you know, and our organization has seen a lot of change over the years between going from public to private and separating our entities, and then the most recent pandemic and, you know, the unfortunate and unjust killings of you know, Black Americans across the United States. So, you know, you take all those into consideration. I continue to find myself in a different role, supporting internal customers differently and external customers differently based on the demand.
Wow. Well, can't wait to hear more of that.
Great.
And Steve, could you tell us your wonderful career path?
Sure. So I feel like the old guy on the panel here. I said yesterday I just celebrated my 25th anniversary at the MathWorks. Prior to that, I worked in public accounting as an auditor for Deloitte. Got my CPA, and I started off at the MathWorks. And similar to what Brian was saying, you flow with the business and you kind of bounce around in different areas and get different experience. That's the way we like to describe it, is getting that broad foundation of finance, accounting, operations as we kind of build our careers and build our knowledge base. I started off in general accounting, closing the books, journal entries, reconciliations, those types of things. And then I just kind of continually grabbed more from you know, management and senior management, and got involved in budgeting, you know, running expense meetings for the company on a company-wide basis. Back in the early 2000s, we started opening up offices overseas. I took a role as a kind of an international consultant / accountant, helping them get up to speed and getting them to be consistent with how we do our reporting and analysis and you know, close the books and have all the, you know, the similar controls in place. That was probably my best 2 years, my favorite 2 years working at the company, to get to travel around the globe, you know, on the company's dime, to see all these different places and all these different backgrounds and cultures and work with folks. Around that time, my second daughter was born, so I didn't want to do as much travel. So I took a role as a revenue analyst in the North America sales side. I did not have most of my experience prior to that was more on the expense side. So I wanted to branch out and get some on the revenue side. So got into do some analysis, working with our sales compensation analysis, you know, planning, forecasting, reporting, those types of things. And then, and in between there, when I was doing some of the accounting, I was managing some functions, managing some folks. But then when I did the international piece, I kind of came off the management track. After the revenue analyst piece, I got back on the management track, and I've been managing in this group now. It's the Revenue Accounting and Controls Group for about 17 years now. And I am constantly recruiting for my role, for my function, and we look for folks with business degrees, accounting degrees, finance, economics, basically looking for those entry-level folks to come in, gain some experience, learn how a software company operates, develop what I consider to be transferable skills that are going to set you up for that next step or that next, you know, piece in your career, whether it's at the MathWorks or elsewhere. And quite frequently, folks come through our group, spend 2 or 3 years in that group, and end up in other parts of the organization. In fact, right now I have 3 managers, you know, kind of talking to me about folks on my team that they're ready to steal from my group and bring them to another part of the organization. And everybody wins from that. You know, they're gaining employees that are familiar with the MathWorks products, the culture, you know, the systems, the whole 9 yards. So we've essentially done the training for them. The individual gets to continue their career at a fantastic organization, and they get to hit the ground running on their next position because they don't have to come in and learn all that company cultural stuff. So we're basically like a kind of a farm system and a feeder system into lots of other parts of the organization. And if you look around the company, there's probably, I mean, over the years, we've probably moved, you know, 40 or 50 people through the organization. And there's multiple people who are not only just at the next position that they left my group, but are at 2 or 3 positions after that, where they continue to progress in their career. And I think that's, you know, when I came to the MathWorks, my thought process was, I'll go there, I'll get 3 to 5 years experience, and then I'll move on to the next job and kind of progress my career that way. But because of all these different opportunities I've had, I've been able to continue to build my skills And first of all, it's a fantastic organization. It's a great company to work for. Me being there 25 years is not uncommon. There's multiple people in our department, let alone throughout the company, that have been there for 25 plus years. And the ones that haven't been have been there for 10 and 15 and 20 years. So it's a place that people go to. And if you do well, you know, you can really make a career at one organization for a really long time. They treat their employees well. They're very visionary. It's privately held and very profitable, which I say all the time is a great combination for a company you want to work for.
Steve, can I just piggyback on that? How is are you still having like a robust throughout company-wide internship program? I know some students might be interested in that.
That's a great question. And we were kind of unsure of what we were going to do this summer because with COVID and everybody working from home, and we had to kind of alter it. We kind of did it on the fly. Initially, I didn't want to do a remote internship. I wanted to be able to do it on campus. We couldn't come back onto campus until about July 1. And even then it wasn't required. It was optional if people wanted to. But from what I've seen in terms of the data and the numbers, most of the organizations, most of the departments continue to do their co-op positions and hire their summer interns like they have in previous years. For my group, they started a little bit later because we were trying to figure out what we were able to do and how the training was going to work. And we had to modify a little bit. But we typically bring 1 or 2 summer interns in. This year we brought the 2 in. Again, they had a shorter period, but I think they both got a really good experience. And we were committed to making sure that they got an experience. You know, they committed to us, we committed to them early on. Then all this, you know, actually we committed to them back in the fall of last year, October, November, right, for this summer. So obviously, you know, we didn't know that was going to happen when we did that. And they came in and spent a number of weeks. Both have enjoyed their experience. They both applied to full-time roles for the positions. We're going through the interview process right now with them.
Just one more follow-up question. I think sometimes students are surprised on the timeline for these internships when they have to submit their resumes and apply. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. And this will vary because a lot of schools will have their career fair in the fall and they'll have another one come springtime. And you guys, Framingham tends to be a little bit later than what, like a couple weeks later than what the other schools do. Historically, I've hired my interns in the spring, in the February, March timeframe. But last year when I was doing my recruiting in the fall, I met a bunch of really good qualified juniors. And I'm like, you know what? We got good qualified candidates. Let's not lose them. And let's get the paperwork accelerated and do it. And it's not just the internship. It's your full-time position as well, especially business students, accounting students. All the accounting firms in particular, if you want to go that route, they're doing their hiring. Like you need to have your resume and everything ready to go in September because they have everything wrapped up and offers out before Thanksgiving in the fall. And we try to do the same thing when when we have candidates that we're interested in, and assuming I can get the positions approved and all that stuff.
Right. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, that's a big if, right? You always worry every year. Brian, I know this has been the case at Staples. Sometimes those internships are there and then they're fuzzy. So could you talk about, what your typical needs are? I know with a big company, both companies are large companies, so you have a lot of diverse needs. Could you tell the students, kind of like that process and what are the needs that you see right now?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So we too, had to pivot really quickly and transition our internship program virtually, which was a success. We shortened it from a 12-week program, which historically, if we do go back to in-person, it'll be 12 weeks for an internship program. We also have several rotational programs for those looking for full-time opportunities, which is a 2-year rotational program. Our finance and accounting leadership development rotational program, which begins in June. And our technology, we have 2 technology tracks this coming June. 2021, June 2021. That'll be available as well. So it's our software engineer rotational program. Then we're going to have an e-commerce digital rotational program as well. So, several opportunities that you'll find, whether it's a full-time job or whether it's an intern in merchandising. I know you have a fashion merchandising program. We've hired several, students out of your fashion merchandising program into our merchandise positions, promotional products, sales, customer service, pricing, which may not sound as great, but pricing is actually a great role, and I'd love to send more details on that if needed. In sales operations, our supply chain field, in corporate roles, technology, finance and accounting, legal, HR. We have opportunities virtually in every aspect of your typical corporate position. And our internship program has gone through ebbs and flows, right? It's really based on the demand, the need internally, and how we think about our workforce planning, structure. But we will continue to have internship program opportunities. We will continue to hire interns, and we're actually going to start hiring interns year round through a company called Parker Dewey. I'm not sure if Framingham State is familiar with Parker Dewey, but we'll be leveraging Parker Dewey to hire interns throughout the year as well. So it's not just going to be a summer internship opportunity anymore. It's we're really trying to think about ways to get projects done quicker, help students gain skills, learn new skills, work with organizations in a different way, in a meaningful way, and remotely, which is great. So short-term projects that students can potentially do in 2 weeks that we don't have the resources for. We're going to leverage that way of thinking as well. So,
wow, that's something new. I did not know that. That's very interesting. I'll have to read up on that. Thank you for
yes.
letting me know that.
Yes.
And Maria, could you talk about the roles that you normally recruit for? And let's just throw in, what are some things that stand out in a resume when you're looking to interview candidates or do the phone screen?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm typically hiring for our customer service team. And my outlook is very similar to Steve's. We're looking to get those folks in as the entry-level employees who are looking to find that home and find a place to grow. Do the same type of thing where I'm bringing folks in. They spend 1, 2, 3 years working in customer service, learning MathWorks, learning our policies and procedures, and then we work really, really closely with sales, accounting, marketing, even internal development. I've had folks go on a slightly more technical track. Sales organizations, operations management, to really kind of find that long-term home for folks. So when I'm looking at resumes, that kind of growth, that career path is stuff that I'm looking for. And when it comes to resume review, we get a lot of applicants. So we're really looking for things that, one, make you stand out, things that make me want to call you to learn more about what were you doing on that project? What were you doing in that role? In addition to things like not having spelling errors. And it sounds silly, but we get them, and we get resumes that have spelling errors in them. And I don't want to trust you with communicating with customers and being the face of MathWorks if your resume has spelling errors in it. So I always look for things like that, but it's really those stories, whether it's volunteering or work experience or project experience, that kind of pulls me in. And what were you doing with this? How did this project end up? What did you do to kind of see that through to completion? So those are definitely things I'm looking for in resumes. Right.
Steve, what's going to get a student in your yes for an interview pile phone screen?
So there's a number of things to look at. There's no single magic bullet, right? So yep. The first most obvious thing you look at is their GPA and their experience. But the GPA isn't the end all be all. I've had some employees who came through and were absolutely fantastic, didn't have a GPA on their resume, and when I asked them about it, it was like, oh, it was a 2.9 something, whatever. But there was something else on the resume that made me say, all right, let's talk to this person and see what she has to say. When you're talking about your experience, and it doesn't matter what your experience is, if it's relevant experience, if you worked in an office environment, or if you worked at a bank or whatever, that's great. If you haven't, but you've worked at Dunkin' Donuts, or you delivered newspapers, or whatever it is that you've done, what I want to know is, what did you contribute? What did you do? What's the value that you added? Figuring out how to describe what you did in action words in terms of what it was that you did. Right. So, as a cashier, it's like, yeah, well, you're accepting cash and processing transactions, but you're doing it with accuracy. You're doing it with friendliness and customer service. You know, maybe there's things that you've identified through the process that you've made some improvements or recommendations to management to say, hey, the workflow and this is a little bit odd. Maybe if we did this, and it might be, you know, it might bring traffic through here a little bit better. You know, whatever. There's certain things that you do and you make observations or you make improvements. Those types of things that describe what you've done, what you've contributed, I call them, those are your hooks on your resume. You don't want to write a paragraph on them, but you want to give me enough information that I want to know more. If you've made an improvement. Now, from an accounting perspective, part of the responsibilities that folks have on our group is they're responsible for collecting accounts receivable from our customers, making sure we get paid for our invoices. You know, somebody in that role might say, oh, I inherited a portfolio with X number of invoices that were, you know, past due, and I've improved my performance or my portfolio, you know, reduced it by 25% or 50% or something like that. That's enough there to say, okay, they made an improvement. Now that's my hook. Tell me about it. How did you do that? What did you do? What was it? What was it that motivated you to change it, you know, to make a change or, you know, implement process, you know, to go about your work. Trying to, again, give people insight or visibility into the value that you can add or you can bring to an organization. And the one thing I mentioned yesterday too is when you do your resume, whether it's spelling and grammar that Maria made, or whether it's content or articulating the content, have multiple people review your resume. Don't just take one person's word and do it. Have multiple people, preferably if you have somebody who works in the field, who looks at resumes, you know, somebody from the career services, go through and have multiple people look at it and get input. You'll get different varieties of feedback, and ultimately you have to filter out which works for you. You know, and some people's advice is going to be better than others, but this is your first impression. If you're not meeting somebody physically, the resume coming through is your first impression to that potential audience. You know, I go out to schools like Framingham or Assumption College or Bryant, and I meet with students, and I've given feedback on resumes, and I can give outstanding feedback to folks in the business side, accounting, finance, business, no problem. One time I went out to Assumption, and all the students that showed up were like in the health sciences department, right? So I can still give them feedback on content and wording and presentation, but in terms of what people in the health sciences field are looking for, I'm not the best person. So they can get my feedback and they can apply my feedback, but they should really be talking to, whether it's professors or people in that industry, to talk to it. And again, I highly advise getting multiple people to do it. One of my Maria talks about spelling errors. I was trying to get an internship when I was in college, and I applied to one of the companies that my older brother worked at. And I thought, I'm a shoo-in for this, right? So I drafted up the letter real quick and I sent it out. I didn't have anybody proofread it or design review it or whatever. I went back and looked at it later, and I'm like, oh, I can't believe I wrote that, right? So it was sloppy, and needless to say, I didn't hear back from them. You know, so I learned from that experience, and nothing, even today, when I send out a critical email, it doesn't go out of I don't hit the send button until somebody else has reviewed it. You know, there's an important message, there's a larger audience or an important audience. I want to make sure that the communication is clear and correct.
I do that with I get Wendy reading everything that goes out for me, because, you know, you need the second set of eyes. Brian, what will get a resume maybe to the phone screen stage?
So Maria and Steve did a great job of summarizing, you know, a lot of the things that I would have said. One additional thing I think is your engagement activities. Don't downplay, you know, how involved you are, what you've done on campus, whether it's on campus or, you know, whether it's back in your community. I think, you know, right now, especially Staples, you know, we're looking for active participation and engagement. And if we see that you've been at a place for 4 years, you've instilled, you know, you've been involved in that community, you're a part of it. We want to know, you know, what have you done to contribute to that community, to your personal growth, to your personal life, as well as, you know, how have you impacted other lives around you in a positive and meaningful way. So, you know, I would highly encourage you to take, you know, time and really evaluate that engagement activity section on your resume and see, does this really speak to me as a person? Do I have all the things on this resume that that if this person doesn't know me, they can clearly see that again, I'm engaged, I'm active, I'm an active participant in my community, and I'm providing value in a different way, right? And I'm going above and beyond. These days, it's so important that we're bringing on associates who, again, want to contribute to society and want to make big impacts, whether small or large, right? So outside of everything that everybody just said in terms of the grammar and the spelling and quantifying, what you've done, and really structuring the bullet points to have meaning behind them and meat behind them, I would say that is something else you can add.
And that's all experience too,
Yeah, it's
right?
Absolutely.
Like, just because
Yeah,
you haven't had a full-time role, if you volunteer 20 hours every weekend, that's a part-time role. You're working with people day in, day out. That's customer service experience. So Don't forget that volunteerism really ties into overall experience.
That's right. That's right.
Brian, I'll stay with you. In this age of COVID and technology, how important in the skills section is, some of these emerging technologies and the ability to use Zoom? Is that important for you to see those on a resume? And also, you think about social media, think about a good LinkedIn. What do you say about that? Hey, Lauren.
Unmute. Hi, Dawn. So
good. I'm going to get you. I just asked Brian a question. I'll get right to you.
Awesome.
Right, coming up next. All right, Brian, threw that one
so
at
how
you.
important is technology? I mean, is everything these days, right? You have to have the basic skills to be successful in any organization, nonprofit, public sector, private sector, large organization, small organization. So there's so many technologies out there. So, my advice is, depending on the role you're applying for, do your due diligence and research, what type of technologies that organization is using today, what type of technology potentially would you be using in the role that you're applying for. And there's some simple ways you can do that if you're not quite sure. If you're applying to a role in the product specialist space, for example, go on to LinkedIn, research some product specialists that are working at Staples. Look at some of their job responsibilities in their profile, in their About Me section. They might have a list of, skills and technology that they're currently using or things of that nature. And if you're, if you can find some transferable technology that you're leveraging and add that to your resume or hyper, focus on that, then, that's going to perk up the ears and the eyes of those that are reviewing your resume. They're going to say, okay, great. They've got a technology that they're leveraging. They've used, we're using this technology, or it's similar. So that's one way. But then, it's Skype, it's Zoom, it's Microsoft Teams that we're leveraging, these days. And you're going to be leveraging these in interviews upcoming. So my advice to students, what I tell them all the time is, if you haven't logged into one of these platforms, or if you haven't created a login and it's your first time using it and you're going on an interview, or it's your first day on the job, I would implore you to do that before, right? Get ahead of it and really become comfortable with the different features that it has on the platform. That way, you come presented and prepared to use the technology. There's a lot of screen sharing these days. You're going to be asked to share your PowerPoint presentation or share the project that you're working on. You're going to be asked to have that on OneDrive, so that way it can be interactive and people can. So you've really got to understand how you can quickly, manipulate what you're doing and adapt to the technology you're using, and show that you're capable and you're able to adapt quickly with the technology. We are looking for students, right? We're looking for the students and the new emerging talent in the to come into our organization with those capabilities to not just know them, but even train some of the associates that are here today with us that aren't well versed in the technology, that aren't using the technology in the way that it's intended to, or just really are uncomfortable because they've always presented in person, or they've always had meetings in person. So it's a new world we're living in. So technology is probably, it's the most important thing, one of the most important things, for sure.
Great. Well, Lauren, welcome. What we're just doing is I'm throwing out some questions, but I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the students and talk a little bit about your role, your path to your role.
Sure. So good to see you, Don. Thank you for having me today. So like Don said, my name's Lauren and I am a campus recruiter at the TJX Companies right in Framingham. So within my role, my team really is responsible for hiring all of our interns, co-ops, and our entry-level development programs. So I've been with TJX about 5 years now, previously in a more of a coordinator-focused role. I was in that role for about 3 years and then transitioned into this role of a campus recruiter about 2 years ago.
Great. And, what had you done prior to that? And was this like a lateral move? Was this a promotion for you?
So I joined the company straight out of college, actually. I had a few different internships in a few different industries, one of which was with TJX. And really just had such a meaningful experience during my time there and kept in touch with the campus recruiters that hired me for my internship. So that's kind of how I found myself within talent acquisition and recruiting after I graduated college.
Could you just tell the students that are here today, what are your typical roles that you hire for, and kind of give a broad overview of, does TJX have a great internship program and, entry-level full-time roles that students could aspire to?
Sure. So right now we have a few different internships that we're hiring for. Holistically, we do have a very robust internship program pretty much in every function of our business. But right now we are actively recruiting for our merchandising internship program. So that's really our biggest program that we recruit for. So since we are retail, our merchandising really is the heart of our business. So within that program, we're looking for students that can see themselves as future buyers for our company. In addition to our merchandising internship program, we are also recruiting for our IT internship program. And then our distribution operations internship program. So that program is located within our distribution centers, and that program really is responsible for shipping that product that our customers would see in our stores.
And I'm going to catch up from everybody else. What do you like to see on a resume that gets that initial application into maybe a phone screen? Is there something that you look for that in resumes that really makes you want to know more?
Yeah, for sure. I would say a few things. I would say really for our programs, we look at a diverse set of backgrounds and experiences, and we really look at all majors. So we love to see leadership on resumes for sure. We understand that a lot of people aren't going to be coming with that retail or merchandising experience, and that's okay. But we want to see those people that are comfortable in leadership roles, even if it's an informal leadership role. And I think the cover letter also is a really good opportunity to really showcase yourself. I think it's a good opportunity to tie in some of the fundamental skills that we're recruiting for in the job description. So if you have some examples of past roles or past projects that you've had that tie into what we're looking for in the fundamental skills within our programs, I think that's a really good opportunity within the cover letter to highlight those skills.
Great. And I'm going to go back to Steve. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, but how important is LinkedIn, and does MathWorks kind of actively look on LinkedIn when they're looking at candidates?
Sure. I think LinkedIn has quickly become a very vital tool in the recruiting process, and not just from the recruiter's perspective, but from you as the applicant. Networking, connecting with people, even preparing yourself for an interview. Once you've got that interview, figuring out who you're interviewing with, go check out their profile on LinkedIn. You can learn a little bit about them and possibly pull that into some of your discussion while you're talking with the employer. That's going to demonstrate that you're doing your due diligence and doing your research on them. If you provide a semi-insightful question about their background or their experience, or maybe there's something in their history that you have a connection with on them. A lot of times the interview is really getting to know the person and not necessarily saying, is this the perfect, do they have the perfect experience? So a lot of times just kind of connecting with the person that you're talking with can go a long way to kind of get you to the next conversation. I remember back in college, I was interviewing with a public accounting firm, and I was interviewing with the Philadelphia office to transfer up to the Boston office. And somehow it got around. They asked what my connection was to Boston. Well, it was my girlfriend, who's now my wife at the time, and she was a dance major. So all of a sudden he started talking about the theater and dance and programs and shows that he goes to see. and it had nothing to do with accounting or, you know, any of my experience. And the next day, I got the next interview to the next level. So trying to figure out those connections. Like I said, you can really use LinkedIn as a tool to either find opportunities, to network with other people. It's amazing. You know, I look at my LinkedIn profile every once in a while, and just the connections and the expansions and how people are kind of, tied together through the web. It's pretty incredible. I do want to touch back on one thing real quick. As for you guys coming out of school, if you look at a job description, it's looking for somebody, you know, relatively early or entry level position, and you see requirements or, you know, preferences on the job description that you don't have, don't let that scare you away from applying. When we write job description, we're writing like, this is the perfect candidate and this is what we want. Right. And oftentimes, you know, when we're talking about technology, when you come into our role, we expect certain basics, right? You need to be able to use Excel if you're going to be in an accounting or business background. But the other applications that you're going to use, we're going to train you. We're going to teach you how to use it. So, you know, if it says something like Oracle, you know, have a preference for Oracle, experience with Oracle or SAP or whatever, that's a preference. That's not a requirement. We're going to teach you. You need to learn the job and the systems that you got to do it in. A lot of our systems we have are homegrown. But if you had that experience, if you're familiar, you know, with Teams and Zoom, it's great to list those things on there. If you've had experience at a job that used a particular, you know, ERP system or whatever CRM system, you know, you've used Salesforce, certainly put that on your resume, because again, those are data points that people can use to kind of pick and understand your level of knowledge. The one thing I will say is don't oversell your skill sets. Like if you say, I'm an expert at Microsoft Excel. Well, I'm going to probe you on that to make sure that to make sure our calibration of what an expert is. So be honest with that. And then if that's an important piece, you know, you're able to handle your own with those questions in that conversation.
Brian, how important and appropriate is having cleaned up social media accounts? And does Staples look at this in the interview process?
This line is recorded, so no, we do not look at any social media accounts to make any judgment on any candidates whatsoever.
All right.
But it is important to have a cleaned up social media account, right? I mean, your professionalism doesn't just start with your resume. Your professionalism doesn't just start with an interview. It starts with how you with really your brand, and your brand representation is out there. It's on Snapchat, it's on Instagram, it's on Twitter, and what you say and what you do and what you're posting out there could have an impact on your employment. It could have an impact on, you know, your future career and your job opportunities. And, you know, let's be frank here. There's a lot going on in the world right now, and everybody's got an opinion on so many different justice causes out there, and political things that are happening out there. So you don't want to jeopardize, if you're actively looking for a job, you're in a job, you don't want to jeopardize your career by saying something or posting something that could get you in trouble. You know, so I would implore you. I've said this to, you know, we have meetings about this internally, and we're asking our associates to put their pages private, right? If it's your personal page, if it's, you know, LinkedIn is a social network for employment, right? Your Instagram and your Facebook account and your Twitter account, those, you know, if you have the opportunity, make them private, right? That way you don't get yourself in trouble, because, you know, what you post out there and what you say in a communication, you could really mean something very positive, and you can mean something that is uplifting and motivating. But how you write it, it could be perceived in a much different way, which you know, I would say, you know, my advice is make it private if you can, and you know, just always do the right thing. But in terms of, there are organizations out there that are actively looking at your profiles. They're actively looking at what you're posting and who you are, because they're trying to uncover, you know, really, I guess, you know, really who you are as a person, and what you stand by and what your beliefs are, and does that tie into the values of the organization? You know, but that's not a best practice.
And Maria, could you talk about the timeline? Say a student sees a posting on the website and they apply. Could you give a timeline of something typical that you would see in your roles that you recruit for?
Sure. I do want to add one thing to what Brian just said is it also is your email address that's on the top of your resume. Like, yes, I have my funny countdown to Christmas one, but on a resume, it's, maria.sarcinelli at, outlook.com, gmail.com, whatever. So the social media isn't just the social media, it's also how we communicate. As far as timing, it really does depend on whether it's, like Stephen mentioned, our teams are pretty much always hiring. I've been fully staffed for 3 days and 3 years, so we're pretty much always hiring. So I have a rec that's always open and looking for incoming resumes. But when I'm actively recruiting for a role, it's usually less than a week. Sometimes it's literally same day. If that resume comes across my desk and there's that hook in there that I want to know more about this person, I'm going to get back to you that same day. Sometimes it's myself, sometimes it'll be my recruiter, kind of depending on the situation. But we try to turn them around within a week whenever possible, with the expectation that I'm not just reaching out to one person when I'm recruiting. We're going to be looking at multiple resumes and reaching out to multiple candidates. So it really is, a first come, first serve. So if I'm emailing you on a Monday and I don't hear until Friday, there's a chance I've already had 2-3 interviews by that point in time. So we try to do that quick turnaround with the same expectation of who we're reaching out to is also on that same, you applied to my role, so I'm assuming you're waiting to get that email, right? You want to know what's my next step.
And we talked about, sorry, Maria, we talked about this yesterday, but you say it's all right if you're not stalking the person to reach out. The student should reach out to you to see how the application process is going.
Yeah, and I think Steve talked about that yesterday too. If you know someone at that company that you're applying to, use the referrals. Reach out to your contacts. If you know who the recruiter is or you know who the manager is, reach out, use referrals. In our system, we can see if someone's been entered, into my application queue as a referral. And that's always going to be something I want to bubble up to the top, because someone who works here and knows about the company and our culture is saying, this is a good fit. That's someone I want to talk to. So use your references, look at your LinkedIn, see who you know at that company, do those reach outs.
The other thing I want to add on to that is be persistent, particularly if it's a role that you're interested in, right? So Marie saying, like, when we're actively recruiting, we're on top of resumes and going through it. But there's also a piece that I'm passively recruiting where, like, I'm looking for hires for next May, right? So I don't need to hire them right today. And we have we're at quarter end and there's a system implementation. There's all this other stuff going on. So I'm not looking at resumes every day. So if you don't hear from me in a week and you're really interested and you haven't gotten an email saying, thanks for applying, but we're moving on, keep following up, be persistent. And that shows an interest in the role. If I talk to 2 people and I'm kind of interested in both and I don't, whatever things get bogged down and one follows up with me, one showing that they're more interested than the other one, right? So they may or may not be the right candidate, but at least there's something saying, oh, this person's, has good follow-up skills.
Yeah.
Lauren, that same question to you. What's kind of like the timeline for your positions and what are your follow-up procedures?
For sure. So like I said, since we are really actively recruiting for summer merchandising or summer internship programs, we are looking to hire those students in the May timeframe. So we are starting to actively recruit for the programs. So our application process does look a little bit longer. So we are taking applications on an ongoing basis as we're going to different career fairs and presenting in different organizations and talking to different students. So I'd say over the next month or so is when we're accepting applications. And then typically we start the interview process in the October timeframe. And then typically after your interview, it's about a week turnaround time before you would receive an offer from us to join us for the summer internship program next year.
And Brian, that question for you as well, but I'd like to find out in the virtual career fair environment, what would make a candidate stand out in your mind in one of these career fairs? Would it be a good question? Would it be professional, interest? What would stand out in a virtual environment for you?
In a virtual environment, there's a few things. It's your background, of course, your professionalism, your attentiveness. Were you on time? As well as good questions. That's so it comes down to really doing your research, right? Our managers are looking for questions that are not your, almost uncomfortable questions, right? Like, it's okay to come out and ask, and it's exciting when managers get these questions. How is Staples doing, in the current, pandemic environment, right? What is the future state of this organization? I think, students and just people in general, when they start interviewing for a role, the mindset is the person that's conducting the interview, the hiring manager, and the person that's on the other line that's being interviewed, doesn't realize that it's a two-way street. You're interviewing the hiring manager just as much as the hiring manager is interviewing you. You're trying to identify, is this organization, is this job, is this team actually something that I want to be a part of, right? So I would implore, and that's advice that I give everybody. It's, make sure that you're when you attend the interview, you are prepared and you are there to interview the interviewer as well. It's so important.
And that's a perfect lead-in. That is a perfect lead-in to see if the students would like to ask you some really great questions today to show their interest in what you've been saying, the amazing information that you have given out today. I mean, every time I do one of these, I'm just like blown away. Thank you so much. But I'd like to hear from the students now.
I had a question. We kind of touched on it already. Hi, I'm Sarah. Nice to meet all of you. In the interview process, do you have any tips, do's or don'ts, both virtually now that we're doing interviews via Zoom, as well as in person, hopefully when we get to go back and do that in the future?
Sure, I'll jump in first. I think the first is, particularly with doing the Zoom call, make sure you're in a room that isn't going to be interrupted. No pets, no siblings, no mom or grandma walking in the room while you're trying to stay focused and go through the process. So as much as you can. Now, obviously, life happens, right? So if something does happen, just apologize and kind of move on and keep your composure. I can't tell you how many times it happens. A couple of times, my dog has come in and she's trying to jump up in the lap because it's just about dinner time, So life happens, but try to prevent those types of distractions. To piggyback on what Brian said was, one of the things I coach people on is when they're going in for an interview, in terms of being prepared, write down your list of questions that you have and have more questions than they're possibly going to have time to go through, right? So the worst thing you can do is get into an interview and they say, okay, do you have any questions for me? Like, no, you covered everything. I'm all set. And it's like, really? You have nothing you want to talk to me? I mean, you can talk to me about me, my management style, my team, the company, how we're doing in the pandemic. You can Google questions to ask during an interview and the whole boatload will come up, but try to get to the ones that are more important, and obviously you preference those, they're your first 2-3 questions, whatever, things that you really want to get out of that interview, and then have your other ones there that if you have extra time and something happens, there's been times when we've been on campus and it's like, all right, you have a half hour with this person, and for some reason somebody gets tied up in a meeting and all of a sudden there's extra time, so now you got to fill that, either I have to fill that gap or you have to fill that gap. The more prepared you are to go through, the more of an impression that leaves.
That's a great answer, and great to bring that up, because the people that come with no questions, that just is a big red flag right there. Sarah, great question though. Do you have any questions? Thank you.
Yes, I do actually. So I just started my MBA at Framingham State, and with that, I wanted to know if your internships are more geared towards undergrads, or if the internships you have, you do open space for more upper level students.
So I can speak on behalf of TJX. So the internships that we are currently recruiting for are for undergraduate students versus graduate students. But that's not to say that in the future that could change. So I would say our careers page is the most accurate place to check where we are actively recruiting and the openings that we currently have. So I would encourage all students to just keep an eye on that page for what we're actively recruiting for at the moment.
Yeah, I'll jump here at Staples. The roles that we're hiring for, they're both undergrad, master's, MBA through PhD level. It really just depends on the need of the organization and in the business function. But yeah, all levels.
So my intern position doesn't, and actually the full-time position, it's an entry-level position into the company. Where you start, whether you're undergrad or graduate, is you'll have, the expectation is that you have a little bit more to offer as a graduate. But I bring in both undergraduate and graduate into the same role or into the same internship position. The internship position is typically a summer role that is a more consolidated version of the full-time position. So we'll adjust, the projects and things we give to you based off of your ability. We have a certain part of the reason we bring the interns. There's 3 reasons we bring the interns. 1 is to kind of give back to the community and get people in to get some experience. 2 is to fill in, during the summer months for people who are out on vacation. You need to be able to continue to produce at the same time. And then the third piece is, this is kind of it's a farm system, if you will, for potential hires, when they graduate. So my group had 2, the accounting department had 2 interns, so there was 4. 3 of the 4 ended up applying for my roles for next May, next June. The 4th one is going on for his master's. So it's the main thing is getting in and getting experience, and then from there, you can take off in different paths based off of your abilities.
Okay, last word, Maria. You would hire. Yeah, you would hire somebody going for their MBA for your role, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. And toot MathWorks horn a little bit. We do tuition reimbursement stuff. I got my MBA after I started at MathWorks, and they paid for it, which still boggles my mind all these years later.
And I'll tell you, they got everything out of that too.
I'm very happy about it. But yeah, it's, like Steve was mentioning, just because it's on those requirements doesn't mean if you have more than that, that's generally not going to be a problem. And it's telling that story and making us want to say, I want to know more about this person and, see what they're going to bring to the table.
Thank you all so much for being here. And I'll tell you, we will have this available to the other students that couldn't make it today, but I want to just thank you. Your time, talents, treasures, as I always say, and this is amazing. And I want to thank you, and I just wish you all the best. And I might be reaching out for some mentorship information between all of you, but yeah.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
So good to see you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don, for coordinating
Thank
this.
you so
And
much.
ladies,
Thank you.
best of
Thank
luck
you.
with your process in the career fair next week.
Yeah, good luck, everyone.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.